So, as I mentioned in one of my tweets recently, I heard the term trauma related dissociation um, last week in relation to somebody that was grieving over the death of a loved one. And it made me look it up on Google. And when I looked it up on Google, I saw an article that used the phrase switching off, that people who experience dissociation of this kind often describe the the separation from it as switching off, which is an expression that I use frequently. It's how I think about it when I'm overwhelmed by the abuse that the shit monster inflicts upon me. I characterize it as switching it off because that's what it feels like. It's what I learned how to do to not give him the satisfaction that he wants from upsetting me and making my life miserable. I hadn't thought of it as dissociative, but when I heard it described that way, and I specifically saw that phrase being used, I thought maybe that's actually what this is. Because sometimes I wonder how I kind of just go dead a bit when there's a lot of turmoil inside, and I feel a great deal of pain. And there are times, many times, when emotions start to creep up. Like really intense sadness, like I want to cry, like rage. But I used to have to work to push that stuff down, and now it's more just habitual. Like I just do it without even thinking about it. But I wanted to talk about this subject because I think I sort of gleaned from things that I've seen that a lot of people for a while there thought that, I didn't feel anything. With women, it's always, either you're too emotional or you're not emotional enough. And there's like really no happy place where people are comfortable with the amount of emotion that you're expressing over something. And I don't, I'm a person who just is completely frank and honest, and like I don't filter my image, to try to make people feel comfortable. That's kind of not what I do. But in this circumstance, I really just want people to understand what this feels like. And I know that there are people who do, because there are people who've been through prolonged, profound physical and mental trauma that completely understand this. But I've been going through this for 10 years now. And in the beginning, and by beginning, I mean when I first, especially, when I first understood that my freedom was being taken away from me in general, but then especially when I was learning that I was physically implanted with something that was being used to abuse me, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Those first few years, I would say, 2014, 2015, 2016, I said this before, the first like 4 to 5 years, I would say, 3 to 5 years, I had a lot of moments where I was so overwhelmed, because you see how Jim Fenwick, the shit monster, is relentless and merciless. And in the beginning, especially, that was especially hard because it was all new and it was terrifying. It was terrifying. And I knew that nobody was going to help me. Nobody would believe me. They would have thought that I was insane, and they would have locked me up in a mental asylum, and I would have lost custody of Maya. Um, so I knew I couldn't do anything about it. I mean, I tried to do things, but none of it worked. Um, so, I would have these moments because, I mean, he would make me, I would be up, for days. And I would get with just a few hours of sleep, and they're um, just sitting up with him, tickling a specific place on my foot constantly, or, whatever it was, raping my labia, the nipple thing. Um, just constant, merciless for hours and hours and days. Anyway, and in those beginning times when I was first initially going through that, I did have these moments, like I've heard rape victims, and especially victims of child molestation, when they talk about it as adults, say that when it was happening to them, that they would leave their bodies, and that they would watch from a corner in the room, or I heard someone in a documentary recently say that she went out the window. She just left the room. And of course, it's not real, but that's dissociative. Like, that's what dissociation is. And that's traditionally how I kind of had always thought of it. And also, like, split personality, it used to be called split personality, and now it's dissociative personality, whatever the hell it's called. Um, so that was kind of like what I thought of as dissociative. And but in that, like I was saying, when this first was happening in the first few years, on those terrible nights, especially when I would just be lying in a bed trying to relax, and I was shaking and crying, and sometimes begging for it to stop. And sometimes I called for my mother, and I mean, it was really, really awful. Um, anyway, in those moments, I would wish that I could leave my body. I would think about leaving my body, and want to, and be like, if I could only just not be inside my skin, so that I didn't have to experience this right now. And I could never figure out how to do that mentally, I guess. And I wonder how, um, what I guess I just don't have the mentality for that. So it never really worked for me. I couldn't, my imagination couldn't create that for me. So I kind of just felt stuck. Anyway, that was in the beginning, that was kind of what it was like. And, after years and years of experiencing this, I just learned how to habitually just shut off, especially more recently, I think, once, because, I used to have Xanax, like I, I smoked weed, like I had things that helped me stay calm, and Jim Fenwick took all of those things away when he was trying to regain power over my decisions, like starting in 2020-ish, 2021. He took all of that stuff away for me that helped me so much, that I didn't have before that, by the way. I didn't have that, like, until like 2018, I think. Um, I went, with nothing. I mean, even like he even turned the Benadryl that I was taking to try to sleep into placebos. But anyway, that stuff had helped me for some time. I mean, like I would just do it at night when I was trying to go to sleep and relax, and weed just makes you not think about it. I mean, that's why it works. You just don't think. It's like you're distracted by other stuff. Everything is interesting, and like you don't need to focus on it. Um, anyway, he took all that stuff away, now, like 3, 4 years ago, and I really had to find ways of coping without it. And I mean, I have wine in the evening, but I don't. It's like I don't drink very much. I'm not, I really don't drink very much, and I don't drink during the day, and I only drink for 2 to 3 hours at night, um, and then I'm stuck with myself. So I've had to learn ways of coping, and um, I've built, I guess, a certain amount of strength from dealing with it for so long, or I don't know if it's strength. I hate to say strength because it's such American bullshit, but because it's trauma. I mean, even though I'm able to switch it off, it's still trauma. Like I'm still being traumatized. Um, anyway, so I think I actually have two primary objectives when I started to really switch it off, as I call it. And the first one was that I knew that Jim Fenwick enjoyed my suffering so much, and I did not want to give him the satisfaction. So I just was like, he's not going to get one tear from me when he's inflicting this pain on me. Like, I'm just not going to give him anything. So that was my first motivation. And the second motivation was, you know, the histrionics. And it's not, it's not like, um, anyway, whatever. The histrionics really just exhaust me. They make me tired. They ruin my day and night, and it's exhausting. And then and also it creates like sort of a snowball effect where you're just kind of focused on it and dwelling on it, and it depresses you. And I mean, I do live in a general state of depression like all the time, but I mean, it's like that kind of brings it to a whole level of like, I can't go on, my life is horrible like every minute, and who can live like that for a long period of time. So um that was my other motivation, was I just couldn't stand to live like that all the time. Um, so, really, by switching it off, I guess this is what I ultimately wanted to get to. By switching it off, I just mean that it's basically like repression, I guess. I'm just shoving it down, like when the emotions start to creep up and I maybe feel like I'm going to cry, like I just put it back down. I shove it back down wherever the hell it's being stored. And I know that's bad just as a psychological thing, but also I have been really struggling for the past like 2 to 3 years with my language, with, words that I used to be able to access so easily, that were common for me to use, both speaking and writing. I can't think of them anymore. It'll take me like hours, if not days, to think of one of those words. Sometimes I'll go to the thesaurus and spend like 20 minutes in the thesaurus trying to find this word that I used to use all the time, like something like superfluous, which is like one of my most favorite words. Like, there have been times when I've just not been able to find it in my brain. Anyway, and I wondered if, the part of your brain that stores these traumatic memories is connected to language somehow. And that's why I've been struggling with that so much the past few years, because I certainly hope that it's not like early onset Alzheimer's or something. I mean, my father had Alzheimer's. Anyway, this video is almost 15 minutes long, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But so that's what I wanted to say about dissociative, trauma-related dissociation. I think it's interesting, and when I get free of Jim Fenwick, I would like to go to trauma therapy, and maybe that's going to be something that will be a focus. So maybe this video will help people. Maybe this video will go to a judge that's deciding whether I get free of Jim Fenwick or not. So